Okay, we're recording right now. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a returning guest, a very special guest. We've done a couple shows. We talked about MK Ultra in our last show, and I had him back on. We're going to talk about this phenomenon of mass shootings involving men who feel like they're either hearing voices or something else is very much strange about a lot of these shootings that have really taken place over the last 30, 40 years. And Dr. Eric Karlstrom, he has a website. It's 9/11NWO is one of them. He has many other websites, which I'll include in the show notes. But he sent me a couple videos, which are really fascinating. One was titled A Brief History of Voice of God Weapons, Psychic Subversion, and Propaganda Trickery, Weaponized RF. And then the other one was The True Evil Behind America's Mass School Shootings. And that was done by a guy named Reese. But we're going to talk again about a bunch of names that people may be familiar with and a bunch of events. So I'm delighted to have back Dr. Eric Karlstrom. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Always a pleasure, William. In these incredible times that we're living in, where the elite has access to technologies that 95% of the public are completely unaware of, which gives them an enormous tactical advantage in controlling the masses, which seems to be their goal. This is a very, very important and dark topic. As you know well, goes back many decades. And this is coming right out of our, military and intelligence agencies, as teamed up with our very top scientists since World War II, in ways to control the population through remote electronic means, for instance, radio frequencies, which they had developed back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And now, of course, they're very, very, very advanced in this. And I think this is one of the areas that is most important for Americans and citizens of the world to understand, that the elite, the deep state, has access to these technologies that can make people go crazy and do crazy things like these schoolyard shootings.
Right. I mean, so they've been working on this technology. MK Ultra started in 1953, but they had earlier stuff. I know that Helms, who became the head of the CIA, was involved in it during World War II under the OSS. So they're always involved in social control. And that was really the goal of MK Ultra and all of its sub-projects, was social control. And you have done a lot of studies on that on your website, but they were always trying to get programmed assassins. They really were trying to create this programmed assassin, right?
Yeah, and absolutely. And actually this does go back to World War II. And again, here we have this teaming up of some of our best, most brilliant scientists with intelligence agencies and the military, even going back to World War II. Professor George Estabrooks, a high-level Mason at Colgate University, actually approached the Department of Defense during World War II and said, hey, I can make, through hypnosis, I can make multiple personality in a Manchurian candidate, someone who can be triggered through hypnosis to go from their front personality to a subaltern personality, which they have created. So these subaltern personalities created by a psychiatrist. And then this person can be programmed, as you say, to kill. This goes back to 1942. And Estabrooks has a book on this, on hypnotism and how this can be used. But then when MK Ultra started, building not only on the work of the British with the Tavistock Institute, which had been going on these kinds of psychological warfare programs since World War I, and not only on the backs of all the Joseph Mengele horrendous human experimentation of World War II by the Nazis, then the OSS and the CIA pick up the ball and move it forward with MK Ultra, Project Bluebird, Project Artichoke, Project Often, Stargate, and remote viewing, and all kinds of things. And then more and more this focused on the use of electromagnetic frequencies. So the human brain is much like a radio. It sends and receives information on these electromagnetic frequencies. And the information can be decoded by, electroencephalographic images, which a brilliant scientist from MIT named Dr. Norbert Wiener figured out. He figured out how to decode these EEG squiggly lines. He was a mathematician, genius, and he just much like your electrocardiogram, you see the readout, if you're getting your heart checked, you see the lines going up and down. Well, this is what our brain gives off these frequencies as well. And they know which frequencies trigger which emotions, they can target particular organs. They can do an enormous amount of actually remote control of the human being remotely through these electromagnetic frequencies, which no one can see. And the people can be programmed to kill, not only with hypnosis, as it was in Esterbrook's day of 1942, but starting in the 50s with when Norbert Wiener invented this autocorrelator machine, and then MK Ultra subproject 119, Saul B. Sells, Texas Christian University, the goal was how to activate the human test subject remotely, electronically. And that's 1959. And who have they been using for their test subjects? Well, they've been using people that, like prisoners, people who are, at mental institutions, and more recently, more and more individuals who cross a line for someone high in power, and maybe they're a whistleblower or a quote unquote dissident, or maybe they, could be just about anybody now that becomes a targeted individual by the government. And many of these are used for these non-consensual testing subjects. And these are terminal experiments, which is to say, if the subject dies, that's fine. In fact, they often want to get rid of these people. So these are basically kill contracts that the Department of Homeland Security farms out to their friends in the privatized intelligence and privatized security sector. So FBI, DHS farm out these contracts through the fusion centers. We have 78 fusion centers now after 9/11. And then they can go ahead and use an individual as a human test subject to see, and test these non-lethal electronic weapons, quote unquote non-lethal, directed energy weapons, neuro weapons. The brain is the battlefield, according to Dr. James Giordano at Georgetown University, which has a huge history with MK Ultra, MIT, Georgetown, McGill, UC Berkeley.
Cornell,
yeah.
They're all
Cornell,
so many. Stanford.
Yes, exactly, Stanford. But so many of our very, very top universities have been and are involved in these programs. This is a big bucks, to use neuroweapons and to test neuroweapons, because the military doctrine has changed. We're in the revolution of military affairs, and now we're going to have the battle spaces everywhere. It's in your neighborhood. It's between your ears. And if they want to control the information between your ears, they can now access it. They can tap it, and they call it information warfare. They can add information, again, with these frequency weapons, and they can subtract, believe it or not, information from the human brain. And so these shooters, and we're getting now to the point of the shooters, these people are remotely now programmed to kill and other things. This goes back to the Manchurian Candidate, which the great movie in 1962 starring Frank Sinatra, and showing how the mind can be controlled so that an individual flips from his normal personality to this programmed personality. Now they're the killer, and you see this in this 1962 movie with Frank Sinatra. And, and then of course we move up to the 80s and we have the whole serial killer phenomenon. And David McGowan wrote a great book about this called Programmed to Kill, The Politics of Serial Murder. Well, these people were also programmed by our government to kill. And so these shooters are programmed by our government to kill. Now, why would they do that? Well, to control the population through terror, through fear. And of course, they want us to give up our Second Amendment rights and give up our guns. So this is a way to control the population through fear, to have these orchestrated events where these individuals are themselves the victims. The killers are themselves the victims of these technologies, and then of course the society will blame them for all the damage. And it's kind of the one lone nut scenario. Well, he went off the edge. Myron May and Aaron Alexis and as you say,
Gendron.
Yeah,
the Uvalde guy. His name is Salvador Ramos. Is that right? So all these guys have strange backgrounds. Even going back to Manchurian Candidate, that was John Frankenheimer, who drove Robert F. Kennedy to the Ambassador Hotel. The guy who directed the Manchurian Candidate takes RFK to the Ambassador Hotel, where Sirhan, who is has something happened to him, is framed as the killer of RFK. I mean, you cannot write that stuff. It's unbelievable. So they were looking back at this programmed killer back in the early 60s, and we're in 2022. So we're far past that.
Yeah, let me just add a wrinkle to that. Okay, the great first book on this, I think, came out in 1978 by John Marks, who was able to do a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, and get 10 boxes of documents from the CIA, which talked about the MK Ultra program that they had run from 1943 to, at that time, about 1963. And Richard Helms, the CIA director, had thought that he had destroyed all the records, but apparently they found this box in a copied in a financial records part of the CIA, and they gave it to him. And in his book, which really talks about the whole program, because what they did, he was State Department, and he hired a bunch of people somehow to go through these 10,000 pages of documents, 10 boxes or whatever, and figure out which of the 149 projects was carried out by which researcher at something like 40 different major institutions, really, top-notch institutions, and who the principal investigators were and what happened in each of these sub-projects. And in his book, in a footnote, he says, Milton Klein, one of these top hypnotist psychiatrists, said that it will take me 3 months to make a patsy. That'd be Lee Harvey Oswald and Sirhan. It takes me 6 months to make a shooter or a killer. That's with hypnosis. That's the old way. But then by about 1959 or so, they had RHIC, radio hypnotic intracerebral control. They were able to hypnotize somebody, first of all, fragment their personalities into multiples, some of which would then be, programmed to kill. And you can trigger them into a killer subalter personality, which was formed by trauma-based mind control. Some would say satanic ritual abuse. And then they become your biorobot slave. And this technology was discovered and discussed in the early 60s and was used probably in the Kennedy assassination of 1963. That's per a book by Solomon, pseudonym Lawrence Solomon, Were We Controlled? It came out in 1967. So wow. This is how long these people have been on top of these technologies, which really go back to the 40s and 50s and 60s, and have only become more sophisticated. Now that's all. The system involves satellites, supercomputers, and direct electronic communication with the victims' brains. It's we don't see it.
It's right. It's super sinister. They're looking for people who can be easily hypnotized. Like, people are on a spectrum, is my understanding. Some people cannot be hypnotized, and some people, like Sirhan, you can snap him into a different personality in like a matter of seconds. Like, he just flips. That's my understanding. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Like, people are on a
yeah. There is a continuum, and about 1 out of 5 or 20% of the population is highly dissociative, which is easy to put them in a dissociative state, where they just kind of zone out, like maybe you're meditating or something. And it's those people that are dissociative, either genetically or through, ritual abuse when they're children by the age of 6, that you create these dissociative, multiple personalities. These people are created to be this way. And this goes back to the Illuminati, and the secret societies, and they've been in control of politics for many centuries even. And they do this to their kids, to make them kind of, super men and women who will serve their cause. And it is a most disgusting subject. I spent a whole year researching this in 2012, and I wrote a long article called Mind Control History and Applications. And I reviewed about 50 books for that. I just read them, and then, as an academic, former university professor, I just did basically a literature survey and then wrote the summary in that article and got to know the subject. But the point of my reason I'm talking about this, it was very, very unsavory, toxic, evil, diabolical subject. And so I had to just kind of took me the whole year. I could have done it much faster if it wasn't so evil. I had to put it down and go for hikes, And
right, I bet. It's really sinister.
It's unbelievably demonic, This is demonic stuff.
And people where assassins were created, but many people had their brains and lives destroyed through this experimentation. So it's not like they found a guy and did it, but there's examples, Ewan Cameron in Canada, like they had to payouts and all this stuff. It's a very long story, but they de-patterned people. They were trying to erase them and then reintegrate their minds. And some people turned into vegetables and some people's personalities changed. Really horrible stuff and they did it really in a very sinister way because they had them sign consent forms, but they didn't have informed consent because they didn't know what they were getting. And Ewan Cameron, they bought out curare, which is like one of the most neurotoxic things in the world. They were giving it to people without their consent, like all kinds of strange stuff. So there was a lot of wreckage. And so some of those people, I'm old enough to remember homeless people and strange utterances and stuff like that. Some of those people were victims of some kind of mind control experiments. And it's out as strange as that sounds. I do believe that to be the case.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, according to Brian Coffron, who is one of these targeted individuals, who prior to being targeted actually worked in security services industry and was, himself doing the targeting of targeted individuals as part of his job. And then his moral sense objected to that, and he kind of came out and said, okay, here's what they're doing. What they're doing is, and this was private industry, working with Amazon, SIS, Securities Industries Services, were getting these very, very brilliant people, harassing them out of their homes and out of their secure jobs, and then kind of herding them up to the Seattle area where they would be homeless, and they'd be put in these shelters that they would manage, and then they would target their brains. And this was fairly recently in order to control them. So they become then the lab rats for a process which no doubt is meant to be used against all of us. So the very dark, evil nature of this whole thing is that the powers that be want total control, total population control. They do not want freedom of thought. They do not want free will. And again, if we go back through the history of the psychologists, go back to Wilhelm Wundt, the father of modern psychology in Germany back, a couple hundred years ago, and then follow him over to his student Pavlov in Russia, and Pavlov's dog and all that stuff, stimulus response. Again, a mechanistic look at the human being. It's like we're 47 cents worth of chemicals. There is nothing divine. There is nothing sacred about the human. It's just 47 cents worth of chemicals that we want to manipulate. And then you follow it through the Tavistock Institute at World War II and onward with William Sargent, who was doing every kind of conceivable way with lobotomies and electroshock and ECT therapy to break the person's mind down. And then go to the Nazis with Joseph Mengele and all the insane, brutal testing that he was doing killing people in the process with no regard for human life, the sanctity of human life. And then those Nazis came over in the paperclip operation, as you know, into the United States through the CIA, through the rat lines, through Operation Paperclip. And they then took very prominent positions in the CIA's MK Ultra mind control experiments and related projects. MK Ultra being part of a much larger Manhattan project of mind control, which is top secret to this day, because I think the targeted individual program, which I'm talking about in my gang stalking mindcontrolcults.com website, because I am a targeted individual now, it's a matter of survival for us TIs to know what's going on. These are terminal experiments. And they're classified. They're black operations. They're unacknowledged special access programs. According to targetedjustice.com, which is one of the better websites on this subject, the head of Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, all of these, major cabinet positions would be in on this. And according to Targeted Justice, Dick Cheney is heading it up. It's hard for me to imagine that Cheney is still that active at his age, but this is extremely dark, and it has everything to do with what Yuval Noah Harari is talking about nowadays with giving up your free will, and we will completely monitor you inside and out, monitor your brain, monitor your thoughts, hook you up to our Pentagon cloud, and you'll now be our slave. Well, I mean, this is the opposite of everything that is sacred to me, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and which our Constitution is all about. But these guys have done an enormous theft of every kind of resource, including now human resources. They've been doing that. They can take ideas right out of our brains without us knowing with these technologies. And again, going back to our shooter phenomenon, James Holmes, and the Columbine shooters, these young men were basically traumatized through electromagnetic frequencies and other things like rape,
Right.
to become, in fact, Manchurian candidates. And this is what's called the Monarch program, which is the militarized version of the MK Ultra. In other words, how do we make a bio-robot slave? So someone who will do our bidding. And of course, this can be Manchurian candidate assassins, can be sex slaves, can be couriers who have excellent memories and mind files, who report back to their handlers. So we're really deep into the world of spydom here. Spies won World War II. Spies have been managing the world ever since for the power elite. And, once I, get further and further into the subject, we have assets, we have handlers, and it looks a lot like the movie Enemy of the State, where all of the resources of the state, can go after one person now, or look like the James Bourne, movies, and you see all these guys in a military chain of command and their computer screens and they've got millions, if not billions of dollars worth of equipment, and they're going after one person. And this objective was stated by the Aspen Institute, so we're going to change our focus now and we're going to go after individuals. Well, that's what they're doing. They're going after individuals. And one way they do that, and one of the products of that, is to create these shooters like Aaron Alexis and Myron May and now this guy in Uvalde. And then, of course, the press is complicit because they spin the story the way that the intelligence agencies, the deep state, want to tell it. So that we then now should give up our guns. When in fact the whole thing is created and orchestrated by the deep state, the CIA, the military, and their private consulting firms like Lockheed Martin, et cetera. This is very, very dark.
No, that was it. And Lockheed Martin was attached to Columbine, right? So that whole military industrial complex corporation, set up Columbine. So those two kids that were in there was Harris and Klebold were in that environment, which is very
and of course the media paints they were goth, they were very dark kids, disturbed kids, and whatnot. No, those kids were raped and destroyed, either by Lockheed Martin or by our government to fulfill this function. And you notice, of course, the way the police handled it. They didn't go in there and stop it. They stood back, just like they did at Uvalde, so that it could run its course. So you have this, unbelievably corrupt system. The people that we pay to protect us, the police, the FBI, the CIA, they're killing us, basically. And they're, I'm a target individual. This is a silent kill program. They are doing kill contracts on American citizens who are innocent, haven't committed any crimes, but have bothered somebody in the high levels, or they want to use us as test subjects for their brain projects, etc. We have a criminal system, and it's not going to fix itself. And the American people are going to have to step up to the plate and say, hey, we're not going to pay you to kill us. We're not going to pay you to genocide us because you spent our Social Security, which is the reality. I have to tell you the story, William. My uncle was high in the CIA, and PhD political science, University of Chicago, mentor from Hans Morgenthau, this German Illuminati PhD economist, wheeler dealer. And, we had a pretty good relationship. He's a nice guy, but, as I got older, I realized, more and more of what he was about. And I remember him saying, at one point in the late 90s, when he was in his 80s or plus, he said, what are we going to do with all these old people? And of course, if I had been, a little sharper and a little more, confrontational, I might have said, well, I guess we'll just have to kill you, but that was the implication, was that we can't keep this Social Security program going, which has, we've spent the Social Security funds. So, in order to, balance the budget, we're going to have to kill the creditors, and that is exactly what they're doing now with the COVID thing and with the targeting thing, which is an ever expanding business, which enlists large parts of the civilian sector, to really form de facto death squads to harass the targeted individuals to death. And I've heard several accounts of how when someone actually commits suicide, they have parties. They celebrate. So it has drawn upon a certain segment of society, which is, really sadistic and sick. And they get financial rewards, I'm sure. I mean, this is probably the reason they have the parties. They get a big bonus when somebody commits suicide, So, whereas
it's really hard to believe, but if you look at a lot of these killers, they were under the care of a psychiatrist or psychology, juvenile diversion program for Harrison Klebold. You look back, Holmes had tons of psychiatrists. So these guys are in the hands of people who may know more than just, talking about your problems. These guys may know other techniques. They may have the blue book, the handbook, right?
Yeah, the dark side, the weaponization of psychology is at the core of this. And again, I was starting, with the Wilhelm Wundt over to Pavlov, and then up through William Sargent, and then we come up to, Joseph Mengele. All these guys must have been incredible sadists and psychopaths. And then we come over to America, and then we have William Norbert Wiener, and then we go through the Macy Conference, which is a precursor to the MK Ultra. And if we look at the people that were involved in that and what they did, to victimize innocent people, such as you say, William or Ewan Cameron, who basically, he put his patients who came in with real minor complaints, and he was head of the American Psychiatric Association, right, Canadian Psychiatric Association, and the World Psychiatric Association. Right. You couldn't get more respectable, and yet he would take his patients and with electroshock therapy and LSD and drugs and things like that, he would put them in a coma for like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and he would try to erase their personality, completely back to a tabula rasa, blank personality, so that he could reprogram the individual. And psychic driving was the erasing part, and then the repatterning was done. This was his assistant was a guy named Rosenberg, or something like that, who was actually an electrical engineer, not a psychiatrist, who would rig up taped messages through kind of a football helmet kind of thing. This is back in the 60s. And messages would go nonstop. You're terrible. Your mother hates you. You should kill yourself. And just reprogram the person so that they can be completely controlled. And this is what we see with so many of the targeted individuals now, hearing these voices with voice to skull or voice of God weapons, microwave hearing, synthetic telepathy, which again goes back to 40s and 50s technology, widely used to break down the personality. So while the CIA said, oh, you and Cameron didn't come up with anything very useful. Well, in fact, they're using it in their TI program all over the world now in order to destroy people. Now, these are the people that we pay, William. These people should be, at the very least in jail. I think they should be all hung. And I think, I've got the names on my website. I mean, many of them, who are directing the programs now, who brought us to this stage over the decades. I've got about 2,000 posts on my gang stalking mind control cults.com website. I mean, I'm a little bit angry about this, This is a takeover of the world by a small elite group which has garnered control of the military, industrial, and intelligence complexes, the press, and and I'm afraid academics, and it's not a huge group in numbers, and yet they're this scientific elite is running for the goalposts. They think they've got it in the bag. If you listen to Klaus Schwab and Yuval Harari,
right.
These guys think they've beat us. And my inclination is, no, they haven't beat us. We outnumber them vastly in numbers, and our God is on our side, not theirs. I mean, they're really working for Satan. I mean, this is about as satanic as you can even imagine. And that's one of their best protections, because most people can't even fathom how evil these people and these technologies are.
Right, and they're in total violation of the Hippocratic Oath, that kind of the gold star standard going back to ancient Greece that doctors are supposed to have for their patients. Don't poison them, do no harm, those type of things. There's actually a book on mind control that starts out, I can't remember the title, but it starts out with the lines of the Hippocratic Oath, because they violated that and the Nuremberg laws, right? So it's a violation of bodily autonomy.
Yeah, I've got several posts on all the laws that are being violated by this. There are about 40 federal laws in addition to 4 or 5 of our, Bill of Rights, and of course, about 4 of the 10 commandments are violated by this targeting process, and the Nuremberg Code and the Geneva Convention, and it goes on and on and on. And we have actually anti-stalking laws, and it's a crime, it's treason to deprive an American citizen of their civil liberties under 18 Code 241, and it's been used successfully. What's happening is domestic terrorism, although they don't call it that. They deny it. It's all denied, but it is domestic terrorism. It is torture. It is soft kill, silent kill, slow kill, torture by these technologies, with the people on the ground being the psychopath gang stalkers, the perpetrators, who are paid often very well to go ahead and every day go out and harass and destroy the lives of their neighbors. So we have death squads all over America, very cleverly done, run by the FBI and the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and more recently, I'm finding out your local police departments are central to all this. So your local police departments have contacts with their informers, and then they have the neighborhood watch and the COG, which went in under no, that's of course continuity of government. I'm talking about cops. What is it? Citizens on Patrol is one acronym name for that, cops, and the other is community-oriented policing, which came through under the Clinton administration. And I believe Joseph Biden is the senator who introduced that bill. So Biden is exactly, all of the top guys know about this, and yet it's completely denied. And so really we're talking about a criminal racket. We're talking about a criminal conspiracy now in control of the United States of America, of course, the greatest nation in the world in terms of technology and wealth. And
it's totally it's never acknowledged. You almost even in the alternative media, it's not acknowledged. They don't talk about this stuff, and it's all in books. Like, you can go back and see all the people who've sued. You can see the lawsuits against you and Cameron, who's getting money from the CIA and the government of Canada. That was kind of the big scandal, is that he was actually being financed by his own government. But nobody really wants to talk about it. But there's there's so many, I guess it would be called social control or mind control is involved in so many events in American history post World War II. It's like, how can you not acknowledge this? And they used to have, my understanding is there was a line in the Nixon administration, I got to verify this, but it was a mind control hotline to see if the president if there was a mind control subject they could use for political ends. It's unbelievable. That was, 70s. So you're talking 50 years ago.
Right.
Have you ever heard that? The mind control hotline?
No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah. I'll get that. I'll see if I can find that reference. Yeah. So it's live. They lie about it, but it is, and it's all special access program. So that means it's super top secret. The information somewhere where you have to go through a variety of different doorways and guards, and then there's no computers in there. You're not allowed to take a phone, and everything that you see stays there, right? So that's how the special access kind of things work.
Right. Well, and yeah, just to fill you and my audience in, I mean, I spent 30 years as a physical geography professor at 3 universities. So my training is not in mind control or psychology. But when I retired from a 30-year career in which I did what normal professors do in my field, I started looking at some of the issues. I already had a website, 911nwo.com, which, pretty much proved what happened on 9/11. In distinction to what the official story is. I had another one called naturalclimatechange.org because that's my field. And I knew for sure that the global warming thing was a scam and that it had enormous political implications, which are still coming down on us. And then I had started to research what's happening in the San Luis Valley area where I live in Colorado now. And it's called SanLuisValleyWaterWatch.com. And I've seen the kind of the criminal cabal, the racketeering group associated with the UN try to corner the profits on the multi-trillion-dollar aquifer that we're sitting on here in the San Luis Valley. And the history of that is all on that website. And so, I can see that there would be many reasons why some individuals might want to have placed me on the terrorism watch list. But of course, they are the terrorists. They did 9/11. They orchestrated all these school shootings. They did, Oklahoma City. They did Ruby Ridge. They did, down the list of horrific terror events. These are all deep state government operations to control the people through terror and, Waco, you name it. The list goes on and on. And a friend of mine here in Crestone, where I live, looked up the school shooting phenomenon and found 291 such cases over, the past 20 years, something like that. And so, yeah, it is important to realize that the technology is there for the government to make these assassins, these Manchurian candidate assassins, biorobot slaves electronically and remotely, and that this is the military's Monarch program, which was used on people like Bryce Taylor, who wrote a book about it. Thanks for the memories. Her main handlers were Henry Kissinger and Bob Hope. Very smart lady. And she traces a lot of it to University of Southern California, certain departments in neurology and whatnot. And it was always couched in terms of science. We're gonna get the science on this. Well, they controlled her like a biorobot slave. They had her do all kinds of operations. She was servicing all kinds of politicians sexually. She was getting their secrets because she had mind file capability and passing them on back to Henry Kissinger and others. So it was highly, highly top secret. And she could be accessed for anybody's pleasure that was, in the, of course they're chosen because they have, they're good looking or whatever and smart. But she wrote this book. I've read it and I think she is very credible. I think she's one of many who are one of these monarch mind controlled slaves. These people are programmed. They're multiple personality. Now they call it dissociative identity disorder is imposed through traumatic experiences, trauma-based mind control, satanic ritual abuse is another name for it. and used to have to be done the first 6 years, often involving, rape and that sort of thing. But now I think it can be done. What they're trying to do with the TIs is do it after 6 years old electronically by putting the victim through so much trauma that they can be controlled that way. I know they've certainly done some traumatic things to me, but I'm an old rock climber. I've climbed mountains all over the world. To me, these guys are a bunch of I won't say the word I'm thinking of. They're a bunch of wimps,
But it's the application of trauma. Like they're literally thinking, your political figures know that they're imposing trauma on the whole populations and individuals of the United States. So that's what 9/11 is a traumatic event. It's very willfully traumatizing the population.
Yeah, and it goes right back to the Tavistock Institute, which was founded during World War I in Britain, funded supposedly by the Rothschilds. The guy who headed that up, Sir John Rawlings Rees, the third, Lord Sir Dr. John Rawlings Rees the third, Brigadier General. I mean, how many titles can you get? And he was the head of the Psychological Warfare Division of the British Army. And what they did, they immediately started studying shell-shocked soldiers, which is PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder, because they'd gone through trauma. They were in dissociative states, they were non-functional, and they did not study them to try to heal them. They studied them to reverse the process so that they could put lay trauma into the personality of individuals, and do that by extension, they would use those same techniques to the whole population at large. So again,
feet out of their hand. It's interesting that you bring that up because you and Cameron, that was part of his process. It's so sinister, but he would get the people into a state through the torture that he put on them where they would eat out of his hand. So he would do things. This is how sinister what happened to these people is like, do you want me to stop the pain? Yes, doctor, please stop the pain. And then to give them pain. And then he would say, do you want me to stop the pain? Yeah, please stop it. Then more pain. And it would just break them down into jellyfish, really. This process of imposing trauma and then getting them to eat out of his hands. Really incredible what they were really doing. And I guess it makes a person more suggestible. So once that's broken down, then they can tell them what to do because they don't want any pain to come back. That's part. I don't want to get into the details of how these are created, but that's part of that process. That's what they learned through all of that experimentation.
Exactly.
Anyway.
So it always, in the back of my mind, again, I read about 50 or more books on this, and the Tavistock Institute is so important. Dr. John Coleman wrote a book about this, and Daniel Estelin wrote another book about it. But they were working on this, again, since World War I. And apparently these British psychiatrists and whatnot teamed up with the military again, were really kind of obsessed with figuring out just the exact moment and just the exact thing that would break the spirit of their enemy or whatever, their victim. And, they wanted to quantify this. And, I feel like as a TI myself, as a lab rat who is subjected to these frequencies and to this abuse of gang stalking on the street, they're measuring everything, they're recording everything. They want to know the exact moment when my personality breaks and they can control me. I mean, these are real sick jerks,
really sick. Yeah, really sick.
Yeah, because
here's the quote. Okay, please continue. But I got the quote for the hotline. I've got it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is from, I can't remember which book, but it goes, early on, an information hotline was established between these people of money and power, people like Alan Dulles, Sid Gottlieb, Richard Nixon, and others. This hotline enabled them to be kept informed of the content of these experiments and who was participating. They, in turn, found ways of blackmailing certain of these politicians, doctors, and scientists so that they could control and manipulate some of these experiments. They hoped to eventually benefit personally from certain research findings. Many of the experiments started under Bluebird Artichoke MKUltra, continue behind the scenes covertly and independent of the funding and knowledge of our government black project with black budgets. So it was even beyond the black projects and black budgets. Yeah, so these guys knew. So you see those guys, Dulles is all over JFK, Nixon too, Sid Gottlieb is known as the sorcerer, thought of himself as a hooded monk. So these guys are thinking of themselves like witches.
Interesting connection, because what they're doing, of course, is so dark. It is a marriage of military dominance with this occult witchcraft thing with academics and, of course, intelligence. And it's this nexus of witch's brew of scientism, I would call it. I was a physical geography professor, and I thought science was when you went out and tried to discover the truth. But scientism, as in global warming and as in the kind of thing that's gone into this scripted COVID scenario, this is using science to achieve a political agenda. So you pick and choose the individuals who will play ball and come up with the right conclusion. You reward those guys, like Phil Jones at the Climate Research Unit over at the University of East Anglia in London, in England, to promote the global warming thing with these bogus models. And likewise, this guy, what is his name? The guy who did the models talking about how many people were going to die from COVID. He's also at British University. So what they get is these very corrupt scientists. And of course, we see that in spades with these sick psychiatrists. I think that they should be put away.
I mean, I don't think that the committees that looked into this stuff really successfully saw the enormity of it. In 75, what was it? Not the Doolittle committee. It was that committee that they had from the senator, church committee. Yeah. They didn't see they didn't get all the enormity of it.
No, that's the point. Yeah, they got the tip of the iceberg, and they talked about it, and they slapped the CIA on the wrist. And of course, what they did was they moved these mind control operations underground into the cults that they created. And, the Scientology and other UFO cults are created by the intelligence agencies. And, this is where they would do their, mind control experimentation. And now it's out. Now
it's interesting that you brought up Scientology, because I've been reading about this MK Ultra, and I'm seeing the same type of personality test. The Get Into Your Personality test is exactly like what the personality test in the introduction of Scientology. It makes Scientology a sinister group even more sinister. It is so scary. Scientology is terrifying. You do not want to get involved in that. How much mind control? They did things that were incredible. I'm surprised Scientology is even legal. After I saw all of the mind control stuff in there, which I didn't before, they did incredible stuff. They got into programming these so-called things that are leading you up the bridge to total freedom, which is a total lie, are taking you down to hell of total control. But they tell you that when you do these processes, I'm not even going to go do it, but you're programming yourself. The way it was set up, whether it was done by Hubbard or somebody else, you become your own black psychologist. That's how deep it is.
Yeah, and if you dare to leave the cult, then they have what's called fair game, which is another synonym for gang stalking.
Right. That's so true. So that's the targeted individual, gang stalking. So they do all that stuff. That's a known element of getting out of Scientology.
Yeah, and the Masons have their version of it. It's called the white glove, or secret dagger, silent dagger, slow dagger. So a lot of this is coming from this Masonry, which of course is based on this satanic program of the Jewish Kabbalah, which is Babylonian black magic, which really seems to be the source of the occult, the darkest, most satanic occult, which is embedded in a lot of these programs, I'm afraid. So, we are looking at very, very diabolical forces here. And generally speaking, I think the people that are on the ground stalking, I mean, they're letting people out of prison with, plea bar, trade off. I'll let you do this if you go stalk people. So a lot of the people that I run into and other TIs run into are actual criminals that are, given a deal by the police department or by the FBI to go do this work, and this work of destroying other people's lives. And then they're paid a lot of money. And it's managed out of our police departments and our Department of Homeland Security fusion centers. So we as a nation have gone down a very, very dark road of total population control.
Right.
And And so we have to see that the shooter phenomenon is one of the domestic terror events that is trying to keep the population in submission, in terror, in control. And of course, the targeted individual program is, and then of course the whole COVID thing with the vaccine, all of that is all part and parcel of this, kind of scientific dictatorship to take down the population and control it. Well, of course, that's the complete opposite of what our country stands for. So,
right. You have those people doing it. Yeah. It's mass formation psychosis. So they literally can create a formation of people losing their rationality. No question.
And it could never have been done without the weaponization of science and psychology. And again, we go up through this list, Cameron, we go up, and we talked about this in our last interview, about the descent into hell, a rogues gallery, hall of shame. I go through the name of about 44 of these individuals with their pictures and their bios and everything. We go through Jose Delgado, another CIA scientist, mind control guy, who invented the stimoceiver implants that he put in monkeys to control their behavior and emotions. And
put it into a bull, right? He's Spanish. Put it into bull to stop it from being aggressive. So it's psychosurgery.
Yeah, and of course these guys are promoted by the deep state because of it's very useful work for them. But he
went to Yale. He went from Spain to Yale, right? I think,
right.
Which is very telling. Just being at Yale is a red flag, huge red flag.
Yeah, Yale is the center, of course, the big center, skull and bones and everything. But he testified in front of Congress, I think, in the 70s. People really don't have the right to determine their own future and use their own minds and develop their own minds. That's an illusion, he says. Really, they don't have it. We don't have that right. And so somehow or another, they're able to, maybe through the John Gettinger's personality assessment system or whatever, they're able to find these brilliant scientists who are willing to work for these totalitarian aims. They probably filter out for every Delgado and Cameron, maybe they filter out one or two decent people who just decided not to do it.
They killed him. That's what happened to Frank Olson. His son believes that the whole story that he went insane from LSD was a cover for him actually being one of the few known whistleblowers of these programs. He was a conscientious objector. He was troubled, according to his son. You can watch the documentary Wormwood. This is one known CIA assassin technique is to throw somebody off out of a hotel room or something. But he was complaining. He thought he was morally wrong to conduct these experiments. And in 1953, that's what he was troubled by. They think that the covert dose of LSD is a fake story to actually cover for the real assassination, according to his son. But you can see that Errol Morris was the director of that Wormwood thing. So there was just. Sorry.
Yeah, I've read enough books, about this subject so that I've heard several versions of that story. In fact, there's a long book by John Albarelli called A Terrible Mistake, and then it goes into the CIA's mind control experiments. But the version that is most credible to me, William, is that he was asked to go over to Germany. Now, this was a guy who was a PhD chemist who worked at the Edgewood Arsenal, bioweapons kind of thing. But it was a relatively small bunch back then. So he was asked to go over with a group of CIA psychiatrists to a, quote, safe house in Germany where they were doing these, quote, unquote, terminal experiments on non-consensual human subjects. What he saw over there really threw him for a loop. And he came back really depressed because he realized what his group was doing. And this was, again, under Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, another chemist, who was managing the MK Ultra program. And his wife said he was very depressed for a while. And at that point, then Sid Gottlieb actually put LSD in his wine or whatever. He went off on a trip. And he became then a kind of a threat to the whole system. So what are we going to do about this guy who's not on board? And apparently he was at this conference or at this hotel or something on the 10th floor, and another one of these CIA psychiatrists named Abrams, who was all into LSD research, and another one, maybe even Sid Gottlieb, not only pushed him out the window, they hit him on the head with a hammer first, and that was discovered when his son managed to do a second autopsy of the body, 30, 40, 50 years later, they found this blow on the back of the head. So he was murdered. And he was murdered by these CIA psychopaths, you know.
So the bad guys got rid of the good guy, chucked him out of the thing, and then the whole thing continued to go. I got this reference from Gottlieb. It's here. He said, when Gottlieb testified to a Senate committee about his MK Ultra mind control program in 1975, he used the pseudonym Joseph Scheider, a reference to a 19th century lithograph of a hooded monk. It is Gottlieb as he saw himself, a mysterious guardian of esoteric knowledge, alluring but unsettling, drawing inspiration from a pipe to peer into the human soul. So these guys have an occult inflection. There's an element of occultism in a lot of these guys' worldviews. It's not good.
You know, I think you know a lot about the Bavarian Illuminati, correct?
Well, I can't say I'm a scholar, but I'm having a guy on later on this month to talk about his book on the Illuminati. But tell me about it. Tell me what you think.
Well, you know, this is very, very important. I mean, this is a satanic group which was founded in 1776, the year our nation was founded, and they are the ones who, by Adam Weishaupt, who was a Bavarian professor of canon law, who was born Jewish, grew up Jesuit, became a Satanist, and created this structure, this system, the Illuminati, for the Rothschilds, who were just coming to kind of financial ascendance in Europe at that time, and apparently a large group of unseen backers, which may include the Sanhedrin of the Jewish culture, and so it's primarily a Jewish secret society, but not strictly Jewish. And they wanted to, you know, they were fomenters of revolution. They and the Masons, because they, in the next couple of years, they actually took control of the upper divisions of the Masons. So they used the already existing Masonic secret society to, you know, to keep their program going. And the Masons, in conjunction with the Illuminati, then managed and organized the French Revolution, you know, the Red Terror, and killed, 3 million people in the most bloody, vicious, satanic orgy of violence and terror and torture. And then this became the prototype then for the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. And I believe this is where we are now. I think the same group, which I do believe is demon possessed, the top people would be actually, I believe, possessed of these demonic spirits. So they themselves would be kind of ring wraith type individuals. I believe the goal now is to extend that Illuminati bloody revolution to the entire world. And the Masons very much in on it. The satanic groups very much in on it, which apparently includes the intelligence agencies. That also is a cult. So we're dealing with very, very powerful cults, interlocking cults. And of course, mind control would be one of their most profound methods of control, a secret weapon, which they are wielding now. And I'm sure many of our politicians are controlled in this manner, much like the shooters, the at Uvalde, et cetera, they can be controlled as well. And they take out the good guys like they took out Olson, and then the bad guys remain, And so we in the public sector who are trying to defend our lives and our future and our family's future and our country's future, we're up against the wall here because this historic group, which has a plan, is now executing that plan globally. And Tex Mars was a guy who did the Power of Prophecy series. He was a Air Force officer for 20 years, author of some 70 books, and a Christian pastor. And he had this Power of Prophecy.
Yeah, he recently passed away, right? Last couple of years.
Yeah, he died in the last few years. The powerprophecy.com program is still going on with Jerry Barrett doing the shows weekly. But Tex was just one of a kind individual, did a tremendous amount of research on the Illuminati. I bought probably about 40 or 50 of his Power Prophecy programs on CD. And when I'm driving across the country or going to Mexico or something, I'll just plug them in and listen to them and repetitively because there's so much information there about the Illuminati. But with his background in military, he's able to tie in geopolitics very nicely and does a brilliant analysis of what's going on in the world geopolitically. He brings in the spiritual factor. He brings in the the Illuminati occult factor, talks about the Masons, talks about all of these things in a way, I think, which is just so, several cuts above, what we get from any other kind of source in terms of, giving us information, background information that we can use to understand what's happening, because things are so confusing now. Now, one area that he didn't get into that much, as it turns out, was the targeted individual and mind control phenomena, which is what I've gone into. So if you add what he's done with what I've done and others, in similar fields, the information is out there. And, but how many people are going to go? How many? I mean, I had my, I guess one of my relatives come and visit here recently, and I plopped down these huge 2 volumes I had written between 2011 and 2016. Is Crestone Baca, the Vatican City of the New World Order, an expose of the New World Religion? I plunked these 2 volumes over 1,200 pages in front of him. He didn't even open it. Okay, so I can sit down there and I can spend years writing something. Who's gonna read it? Do we have people out there with enough brains and curiosity to educate themselves? I don't know. To me, that's the $64 question. Who are we talking to? Who's out there? Is there anybody out there with balls? Is there anybody out there with brains? Is there anybody out there with a survival instinct who would like to beat these psychopaths? I certainly hope so. How long is it going to take before they realize, or are they going to be defeated before they ever make any counter resistance? I don't know.
Well, how long can these people endure the torturing of their own brainwashed minds? Just like the song says, like they're definitely inflicting trauma upon the population through actions and things like that. So it's incredible. I mean, 9/11 is a perfect example of just like what they did over COVID to the people. I mean, they did use those techniques of like, you're going to die. Everybody's fear of death. Like, you're about to die. They actually said it on that, White House thing. If you don't get your vaccine, you're dead. You're going to suffer and die. So how long are people going to tolerate that? People lying to them, manipulating them? I don't know. It's a great question. Eric, we're at the hour. We're at the 60 minutes. How do you want to just summarize? And, I think you kind of had a semi-closing statement there, but why don't you do that, and then we'll leave it till the next interview, next discussion.
Well, again, I really enjoy these conversations, William, because you're so up to speed on these things. We can move through a lot of material very quickly. And for those who want to go deeper, again, my 5 websites are gang stalking, mind control cults.com, long URL, 911nwo.com, San Luis Valley waterwatch.com, naturalclimatechange.org, goes into the geoengineering and all that stuff. And then my musical website is erickarlstrom.com. And a couple of years ago, 2019 in the fall, I put together a series of 74 soundtracks, which is available for sale on my erickarlstrom.com website, entitled Lifeline, Essential Insights and Healing Music for Illegally Targeted Citizens. And that's who they're targeting. They're targeting citizens who are not guilty of any crime. It's an extra legal process. And this is the TI phenomenon, a unacknowledged special access project. But this program then can create these shooters, again, with electronic frequencies, satellites, supercomputers. People can be tracked. People can be harassed and traumatized. People can have their personality broken, and they can become biorobot slaves for the system. And then they're programmed, and they can be programmed to kill. And this is a very unsavory subject. And I'd rather talk about bluegrass music and puppy dogs, believe me. But we're in a very dangerous place in the world right now, extremely dangerous, because this cabal, this cult at the top, has full access to this technology. The government has a monopoly on violence, it seems. We have to be nonviolent. They can be as violent as they want. They use us against each other. They pit us against each other. It's a little like the Hunger Games, And how do you control somebody? Well, you control the people around them. That's how I'm controlled. I'm a TI. How do they control me? They control me. They surround me with surveillance role players. People get paid to be surveillance role players. They are crisis actors. They are fake people, much like the movie The Truman Show. They are actually spies. They're taking whatever information they get and bringing it back up the chain of command, up to the NSA through the NSA Global Spy Network. All this is described very well in a series of interviews by activist and New Zealand politician Susie Dawson, which I have on my website. So the information's out there for people who are targeted. Yes, you're being put through hell. We're being put through hell, but we can, through information and knowledge, survive this. And I'm hoping that with time, with a more critical mass of people who understand this, we can turn this around. We can prosecute the criminals who are in the DHS and the FBI and our local sheriff and the CIA and the FBI and NSA and of course our local stalkers, the perps on the ground. But we need to know these technologies. I was very confused when I became targeted viciously in 2013. That first year or two is shock and awe. It's like they want to just take you out with all kinds of horrendous experiences. If you can survive those years, the first 2 years, through knowledge and understand what's actually happening and that it's happening to many, many others, you're not alone, then maybe you can survive it. And I think it's part of a genocide program involving also many other elements, but it's a very, very nasty genocide, which our government is doing. So I say stop paying these people for killing us.
Amen. Amen to that. And so I will put links to your websites in show notes, and so people can reach out and talk to you, contact you through the websites. And again, the guest was Dr. Eric Karlstrom talking about mass shootings, MK Ultra, and Programmed to Kill. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, William. Always
a pleasure. Likewise. Take care. Bye-bye. Let me see if I can stop this.